The Locked On Podcast Network presents the NFL Big 3 in 30. The three biggest stories in the NFL from our local experts at the Locked On Podcast Network. We bring you the real story, why it matters, what's next, who wins the big game, and more, all in 30 minutes. The NFL Big 3 in 30 starts now with the biggest story in the NFL.
No drama here, just a systematic dismantling of a division rival on prime time.
You are Locked On Vikings, your daily Minnesota Vikings podcast.
Vikings win 30-12. There's absolutely no drama to it at all. The Vikings go up 10-0 in the first quarter, and the game would never, ever be even a one-score game again. The Vikings wouldn't trail for a single second of this one, and I think game script-wise and like feel-wise, vibes-wise, this game felt identical to the Vikings Week 1 win over the Giants. Didn't it? It was like a similar score, right? Like it's a clearly overmatched quarterback just not able to handle what's going on. There was a Dallas Turner sack. Like just felt very much like that win over the Giants. And it's just like, okay, well, we didn't learn anything about anybody there, but I guess we take easy wins. And that's really what this one is. This is not a game of moments. This is not a game of, oh, well, here's this little specific spot. We got to discuss this and that little thing. Like we're so used to, especially on this show, the last 3 years of Locked On Vikings, like every game recap has been, well, they lost by 2, and here's all the different things that could have changed. Not this one. This one is just clearly a better team. But I do like this thing that I've been doing for most of these games where I like to try to come up with the true moment that encapsulates the game. I got a few things, I guess, but I think the one that comes to mind first is, so in the first half, the Bears went for 2 4th-and-1s and got stuffed on both of them, which turned into this very, very huge thing. That ended 2 of their first 4 drives, and they were both like pretty strung, like well strung together. Well, the first one was actually turned into a 4-and-out. They went for it in their own territory and gave the Vikings a free field goal. The second one came after this really terrible momentum disaster. The Vikings went for it on a 4th down of their own. Sam Darnold threw an interception, which was better than an incompletion. He just kind of threw it up because it wasn't there, and a Bear came down with it. Then the Vikings get off the field, but there is a running into the kicker penalty, so the Bears come back on the field. They drive all the way down. They get to a 3rd and 15, get 14 yards on it, and they're in very clear go-for-it range, obviously, right? Team with nothing to lose. Of course they're going to go for it. And Jerry Tillery absolutely smokes the rookie left tackle that the Bears ended up starting because Braxton Jones reported concussion symptoms over the weekend and ends up out for this game. So Jerry Tillery blows up the tackle. And it's not necessarily that that's the play. It's a hugely impactful moment, like statistically, right? And then the Vikings will get the ball and have a 2-minute drive. They kick a field goal, go to halftime, get the ball back, right? So it's not only that, but if you go back and watch that play, like pull it up on YouTube and watch Gerald Everett on that play. His eyes are not in the right place. Van Ginkel's coming off the edge completely unblocked. So I don't think he quite does his thing right now. Van Ginkel comes pretty deep and wouldn't have ended up having too much of an impact on the play. But a lot of the team still thinks that the play is going on because they didn't see DeAndre Swift's knee hit the ground and then he fumbles. Well, DeAndre Swift knows that his knee hit the ground, so he kind of lets the ball drop, and the ball's bounce around. A couple players like chasing after it, and people are like kind of play. It's like whether they or not they heard a whistle, the crowd's going loud, and so they're just kind of finishing it out. Gerald Everett is off the field, like he is just walking off the field. He doesn't talk to anybody. He doesn't say. This is supposed to be one of the veteran leaders of the Bears. So when I talk about leading up to this week, trying to get the Bears to have quit in them, that was exactly the start you needed. Was 4-and-out, kick a field goal, and then the second they felt like they maybe had a little bit of momentum, you shut it right down. That's getting them to leave. And near the end of this game, Vikings up 27-12, you could really kind of feel which players were just sort of ready to go home. And the Vikings, of course, having all kinds of fun and calmly moving on. Short week now, West Coast. They've got their eyes set to Seattle, and I think they honestly had their eyes set to Seattle by about the fourth quarter, which makes sense because most of the starters had been pulled by then, at least on defense. Your Grenards and Byron Murphys and all those guys, Bynums, all those guys had baseball caps on for the last last couple of drives in this game. Another couple of things that I want to mention, another kind of major moment comes in the fourth quarter. The Vikings are leading 20-6. And boy, isn't that just where the Vikings always kind of sputter out and then they give up a touchdown drive and suddenly it's a one-score game. Like that was always the way it went. But the Vikings drive all the way down and they'll score a touchdown on this one, aided by a complete idiot DPI on Tyreek Stevenson. But that's not what I want to talk about. It's a couple plays before that. The Vikings have a 3rd and 1. And again, isn't this exactly the MO of the Vikings is to lose out on this 3rd and 1, punt the ball away, give up a touchdown the other way, and let him back in the game, right? And there's penetration. TJ Edwards shoots the gap. I think somebody was slow to come off of a double and gets to Cam Akers in the backfield. It's Akers in, not Aaron Jones on this drive. And Cam Akers finds a way to sidestep that, beat the ankle tackle, and dance across the line. It's a fairly ho-hum moment in the span of all kinds of other exciting things, touchdowns, the Randy Moss stuff. But to me, that's the moment where the Vikings sort of turned the page on who they could be. And the flow of these games where they always blow that 3rd and 1, right? The short yardage woes they've had all year. And then they always let them back in. Not these Vikings own the fourth quarter. These Vikings pull away and they would end up scoring again. It ended up 30-12. Those are the two moments. And if you want one other story of the game, the Vikings converted over the course of this game a 3rd and 17, by the way, on the same play that the Nick Mullins to Aaron Jones conversion that happened in the last Bears game. Exact same play to Aaron Jones. They also converted a 3rd and 10, a 3rd and 14, and a 3rd and 7. So 4 different times they converted what you would call 3rd and long, although 3rd and 7 is arguably media, but whatever, right? Like 4 of these 3rd and very much passing down tough conversions, and they got them. They got them a lot, and they got them on time, in rhythm. Sam Darnold, not his necessarily best day, but it felt like whatever hole the Vikings would dig themselves into with either penalties, 4 different ones on Cam Robinson today, or taking a bad sack or something, it always felt like they could dig themselves out of it. And they did in a lot of cases. But let me answer your questions about all of this stuff. So if you want to ask me questions anytime you want, you can send me an email at lockedonvikingspodcast@gmail.com, or you can fill out the Google form, which is in the show notes to any episode. But the first question I am going to answer comes from Nick Dugan, who asks, do you like KOC's aggressive play calling and 4th down decisions as of late? Feels like we often don't know how to play with / sit on a lead. So that's kind of why I brought up what I just brought up, because they really did put the Bears away. And the last drive, it turned into a field goal drive because, they ran on 3rd and 6, which you would otherwise never do because of the clock. They are just trying to kill as much time as possible. But the run game really put them away. And it started out good. The run game kind of had a lull in the middle of the game, but in the beginning of the game, they were pushing the Bears around. And at the end of the game, they were pushing the Bears around. And at the end of the game, the Bears might have packed it in, but still, that's putting the game away. But what you might be talking about is that 4th and 3. So the Vikings have a 4th and 3, an easy field goal range, up 10-0. Most people would kick there. Analytics actually like to kick there, even though it just turns a 2-score game into a 2-score game. It was early, so that kind of logic doesn't really apply to the analytics models yet. They don't really care about that till it starts to get down to the wire. Otherwise, it's just take your points, basically. And a 4th and 3 was just a little bit too much, and Sam Darnold drops back, doesn't like what he sees, heaves it up, and it ends up intercepted, but batting it down would have been just as good. But I will say Kevin O'Connell leans more aggressive than I like, right? And I've said this quite a bit. I think we just came off the Zimmer era. That was the last head coach, and he was way more conservative than anybody liked. Maybe I'm just a conservative guy when it comes to play calling, because I never minded all of that too much, I think other than that 4th down, which I thought, that's probably a kick, I think I liked everything else he did. And I liked everything else the Bears did, to be honest. I think when they're backed into a corner like that, all those go for it's like you kind of have to. Just go show signs of life, man. Like go prove something. I also thought they found a better balance. They started 16 series with a run on first down and 15 series with a pass on first down, right? Doesn't get much more balance than that. And I think that helped them get some more responsible yards, sustain longer drives. They had 3 different drives that were over 10 plays in this game, and contract the game when they had a big lead instead of going, a 10-second 3 and out that gives the Bears every chance in the world to start to stage a comeback. So I liked that.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you cash that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
The Falcons inspired no one in their 15-9 win over the Raiders.
You are Locked On Falcons, your daily Atlanta Falcons podcast.
Very lackluster performance from the Atlanta Falcons. Very conservative performance from the Falcons. We'll talk about some positives about the defense and special teams. We'll talk about, this team's fleeting playoff hopes that did, they're still in it, but they did nothing, emotionally, spiritually, to make you believe that they should still be in it. But the story of this game was how conservative this coaching staff was in this game. They talked about it all night on the broadcast on ESPN. They played it super safe. They played not to lose. And we'll talk about the conservative play calling at the end of the game from Jimmy Lake, that after a very, very good performance from this defense for like 3.5 quarters, they decided they wanted to potentially hand the game to the Raiders. But we'll get into that later on today's episode. Let's talk about the offense. And we know that the Falcons have run a conservative offense over these last 4 games. They've been basically a run-pass offense these last 4 games, and they doubled down on that tonight in their 15-9 win over the Las Vegas Raiders, especially in the second half. Kirk, was okay in the first half. He got the monkey off his back, threw a 30-yard touchdown on a double move sluggo route to Drake London. And it was like, okay, Kirk, all right, we're doing something, second drive, okay, and we'll get this thing going. And it wasn't a great first half, but we'll get it to go in the second half, and that's where the offense can build off of that and build that momentum heading into this home stretch where we really need this offense to step up for this team to win down the stretch. And that all went out the window once Kirk Cousins dropped back to throw on the opening drive of the second half and threw a pick, trying to force it to Charlie Warner late with pressure in his face. Maybe the ball got tipped or whatever, but it's one of those things where right after that moment, the Falcons were like, well, we're not letting that happen again. And the play calling just shut down. And they were already conservative in the first half, just not like to an extreme degree. And they've been conservative for the last couple of weeks, just not to an extreme degree. But they decided to go to the extreme after that interception, right? And I looked it up. They called 3 pass plays the entire second half on first and second down, right? And one of those was the interception that Kirk threw. One of them was a screen pass. So they basically called 1 pass play the entire second half, and they ran the ball 20 times on first and second down, right? And so basically, if it wasn't third down, they were not letting Kirk throw the football. And again, that's not all on Kirk. The pass protection was not great, despite Max Crosby being out in this game. Drake London caught a couple passes, got open a couple of times. I don't even know if Darnell Mooney caught a pass in this game. It didn't feel like it. And they played a soft, conservative, not to lose game plan. And it was successful because they didn't lose, right? A win is a win, if you want to say that. And it wasn't that I went into this game thinking the Falcons were going to dominate this game. I didn't expect them to dominate this game. I didn't need them to dominate this game. I just wanted you to show me something inspirational on offense that would at least make me go, okay, there's a real shot that this team could potentially, run the table down this stretch, because they're going to need it going up against some of these teams later in the season. And if they just got like 20, 24 points tonight, like that would have been good enough for me. You know, I don't need a great offense. I don't need a 30 burger or anything like that. 20-24 is good enough to beat this Raiders team, given where they're at this point in time. And they arguably could have had that in the first half if the offense had performed right. You know, they had, you know, we'll talk later about the positive field position, but, you know, they were very reluctant to try long field goals. They had 2 opportunities to kick 56-yard field goals in this game with Younghoe Koo. They didn't attempt it. And then we got the same patented, you know, Raheem Morris. Let's go out there and try to draw them off sides and take the delay of game penalty. And it's like, all right, man, like I get it, but like, why are we doing this? I don't get it. I get it, but I don't get it, right? And you know, it's just like, you know, they, you know, I don't know, man. It's just like, and it's not all on Kirk. Kirk's going to get all the blame because he's the quarterback and the offense isn't performing and the expectations are higher. I've been very critical of Zach Robinson on this podcast. I will continue to be very critical of Zach Robinson on this podcast. There's no defending Zach Robinson and what he was calling in this game. This is like, you know, we can talk about a high school offense. I mean, we're talking about a high school offense from like 1996 is what this game plan was, right? This is the type of game plan that you have when you have a rookie quarterback, right? Which is why it's like, okay, well, if this is what your game plan is going to be, might as well have Michael Penix out there, right? This is not even a Michael Penix game plan. This is the game plan that the Falcons would have had if Nathan Peterman, the Falcons' third-string quarterback on the practice squad, would have played this game. If they were forced to play Nathan Peterman, like, oh, no, Nathan Peterman off of 3 days of practice, and Nathan Peterman's been around for 3 months. But the idea of, like, you know, if Nathan Peterman just got picked up this week and, like, doesn't know the offense, this is the offense that we would call, right? That's basically what this game plan was. And again, Kirk's going to get all the blame for it, and Kirk deserves tons of criticism. I'm not trying to sit here and say Kirk is blameless or anything like that. But like this is why I don't trust this coaching staff with Michael Penix. And everybody's just going to sit here and be, oh, well, you just put Michael Penix in, it's going to solve all these problems. And we did this, you know, we've done this the last couple of years, guys, where it's like, oh, well, all the Falcons' problems are Marcus Mariota. That's the reason why the Falcons' offense wasn't very good in 2022. It's because Marcus Mariota is bad. And then, you know, we gassed ourselves up and thought, oh, man, Desmond Ritter's going to, you know, he just has to be okay and this offense can cook. And then when the offense wasn't okay and Desmond Ridder wasn't okay, we're like, well, Desmond Ritter's clearly the problem, right? And now we're going to do it again with Kirk Cousins, and we're just doing the same thing over and over again, sitting here being like, man, the only thing that we need to solve is we just got to get the right quarterback in here. And Michael Penix, you're up. You're next. And it's just like, why would I sit here and think any quarterback right now can perform with this type of performance on offense, this type of play call, this type of structure, this type of whatever, man. So that's where my frustration is, where it's just like, it doesn't matter who you put at quarterback. This type of offense just does not function in the National Football League, and this coaching staff has to figure it out. So we'll talk about that later in the episode. We'll talk about, you know, the defense coming up, but let's get the Kirk Cousins chaos meter out of the way, as we do every week on these rapid reactions with the chaos meter, which is something we inherited from Locked On Vikings from Luke Braun. 5 levels of the chaos meter. There were 4 originally. I added the 5th one, right? And level 1 is conservative Kirk. Level 2 is, you know, game manager Kirk. Level 3 is peak Kirk Cousins because it's game manager plus a little bit of chaos. Level 4 is too much chaos. And then level 5 is it time for us to see Michael Penix? And we're at the point where it is a level 5. This is not a level 5 performance. This is a level 1 performance for Kirk Cousins. But in totality, with the performances these last couple of weeks, with the way that this offense is playing, we might as well turn the page to Michael Penix if this is what we're going to do, if this is what this offense is going to be. So the defense and special teams tonight was the MVU, the most valuable units, right? 12 of the Falcons' 15 points that they scored were arguably directly due to field position. They won, they dominated the field position battle. They had 4 drives that started beyond the Falcons' 40-yard line, right? And 2 of those drives they scored, a touchdown and a field goal. So that's 10 of the points. And then they had another drive where they pinned the Raiders inside like the 5 and were able to get a safety. And so that was the other 12 points. So without field position, Falcons probably lose this game based off of how they performed on offense in this game. Because the offense, you know, basically had like 2, maybe 3 drives where they were effectively moving the football, but I don't think they reached the red zone the entire game. You know, and again, maybe they would have gotten it on that first scoring drive because of, you know, they got a 30-yard play on that. And so, you know, but it is one of those things where it's like without defense and special teams, again, it's like the week 4 game that the Falcons won against the Saints where the offense basically got shut out, but you got points from your defense, you got points from your special teams. We've seen the Falcons win that way. We'll take what we can get. And so we'll celebrate the defense and special teams, right? They were able to keep Brock Bowers in check. He did not have a big game in this one. They were able to get pressure on the quarterback and harass Desmond Ridder. His legs did hurt them a couple of times in this game, but it never got to the point where it was too much for this Falcons defense. The front really sort of controlled the line of scrimmage, and you saw multiple people eating. There was a D'Angelo Malone sighting in this game, guys. We got 2 sacks from D'Angelo Malone in this game. Really a sack and a half, but I'm sure the official stat sheets will call it a 2 sacks with the second one he split with Grady Jarrett. But, you saw Caden Ellis kicking butt. Zach Harrison, I think, officially got the safety, but Kentavious Street basically blew up that play, had a couple of tackles for loss. Arnold Bichetti got a couple of pressures in this game. So you go down the list of the Falcons defensive front, and just like last week, they performed really well. The front has been killing it. And, unlike last week, the secondary did their job, right? They got a couple of turnovers. Both of them, I wouldn't say were, outstanding plays from the secondary, right? Justin Simmons' pick was basically a passing punt from Desmond Ridder where he just kind of threw it up for no reason. And Justin Simmons was there to pick it up. And then Jesse Bates got an interception on the final play of the game on a Hail Mary, which gets us to why was that an opportunity for the Raiders to win this game on a Hail Mary at the end of the game? They had 2 opportunities on Hail Marys at the end of the game. We're able to get within, I think, like 30 yards, clock it with 10 seconds left, heave up a ball to the end zone that went out the back of the end zone. And then, Jesse Bates was able to outmuscle some Raiders defenders or receivers for the interception on the final play with 2 seconds left. Thankfully, the tie did not go to the receiver on that one. Shout out to the officials who, bailed the Falcons out a couple of times in this game. They got a phantom roughing, a really tough roughing the passer penalty that really allowed them to bleed like another whole minute off the clock in the fourth quarter, which really helped them out. But the reason why the Raiders were able to march down the field was because the Falcons went back to their old tried and true Jimmy Lake special, that bend but don't break. We're going to play off coverage. We're going to rush 3. We're just going to let the Raiders matriculate the ball down the field. And they were successfully able to do that on those final 2 plays, final 2 drives, all because of the way that the Falcons were playing defense. They playing off coverage, rushing 3. And that's, we've talked about it all season long, where that bend but don't break defense is what they love to do. So again, it's good defensive performance for 3.5 quarters, and then they just decided to take their foot off the gas. And again, I get it. Like, you don't want the guys to get behind you. So I get the off coverage, but the rushing to 3, man, it's just like, especially at the end where it looked like they were dialing up a pressure. And then I think there was a timeout or something. And then they were like, nope, we're just going to rush 3 again. And it was just like, what are we doing, man? What are we doing? So I was just sitting there waiting for the impossible to happen. And I refer to the impossible because if you checked out Atlanta Football Party on Locked On Sports Atlanta last week, Jarvis basically said it's impossible that the Raiders could, win this game. But he caveated it. We got to give Jarvis credit because he basically said if Jimmy Lake calls the game like he's been calling it the last couple of weeks, which is a much more aggressive defense, which he did for 3.5 quarters, it is impossible for the Raiders to win the game. And he was right for 3.5 quarters. And then Jimmy Lake was like, you know what? I'm feeling that itch. Let's get back to that bend but don't break defense. And that's why, like, I sit here again, it's all going to be about Kirk Cousins, and I get it. But like, I just sit here being very disheartened by this coaching staff and the performance on both sides of the ball at the end. The defense played well, and then the coach decided he wanted to cost them the game. It wasn't the players on the defense, right, that cost them or anything like that. It was purely the play calling that cost them. And you had just some of the worst play calling I can recall seeing from an Atlanta Falcons team on both sides of the ball. This was one of the worst coached and called games that I have seen from the Atlanta Falcons in a long time. And I've seen some poor coaching games. I've seen some games where a team doesn't show up, right? And that's a different type of poor coaching. I've seen many of those games over the years with the Atlanta Falcons. I mean, that's basically been their MO for 25 years. Is like, there's going to be a couple of stinkers where they refuse to show up to the stadium.
Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, because right now new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same place where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you cash that first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL.
They became the embarrassment of the NFL.
You are Locked On Bears, your daily Chicago Bears podcast.
It's reaching this point now where I'm just sick of it. And I know you are too. Like, we're all sick of this, right? It's one thing, okay, this season, you're going to lose some games sometimes and be frustrating, when you lose the Texans or the Colts early on or whatever. But it's like we had sort of built up some patience again with this franchise, right? After the end of last year with Matt Eberflus, where the team was starting to turn a corner, and then you had Caleb Williams, like there was a refresh here, a little bit of a refresh where you felt like, okay, new quarterback, new offensive coordinator, fresh direction. Like that built up some amount of benefit of the doubt, but more importantly, just like some patience to say, okay, we could handle early on some struggles with this team. And of course, like it helps when they bounce back and beat the Rams and then really stomp the Panthers and the Jaguars. And like we allowed ourselves to really buy back in and say, yes, they are on to something here. But then the Hail Mary loss to the Commanders, the last second loss to the Packers with the missed field goal or the blocked field goal, then the Vikings overtime disaster, the Lions fiasco that fires the head coach, and now back-to-back super embarrassing losses to the 49ers and Vikings. And we're just beaten down once again. Like we're back into the doldrums of where we existed in 2022 and in 2017 and in 2014. And I mean, 2005, I mean, all these different years, right? That we've all been through this over and over again. And it's such a stark reminder of not just how embarrassing this year's team is, but how embarrassing this franchise is. And when you have it on national television here, it really elevates the level of ineptitude that you see on this team. Because if you think about it, the Bears have lost now 8 straight games. They were 4-2. Now they're 4-10. It's hard to lose 8 straight games. You know what I mean? Even bad teams struggle to lose 8 straight games. The Jacksonville Jaguars have not lost 8 straight games right now. The Tennessee Titans have not lost 8 straight games. The Carolina Panthers have not lost 8 straight games. The two active longer losing streaks are now the Giants and the Raiders, and that's the company the Bears are keeping right now. 2 teams competing for the number 1 overall pick. The only 2 teams in the NFL with 2 wins this season are the only 2 teams with longer losing streaks than the Bears. And the Bears were not supposed to be here, right? The Raiders were supposed to be a bad team this year. We all saw that coming. The Giants, maybe they weren't supposed to be this bad, but we knew the Giants weren't going to be a great team this year. The Panthers, we knew, would be a bad team. The Patriots, we knew, would be a bad team. No one thought the Bears would be this bad. There was a debate on, okay, are they a team that wins 6 or 7 games? Or are they a team that wins 8 or 9 games? Or are they a team that maybe wins 10 games? But it was hovering around 500, not 4-10, and not a win left visibly on the schedule this year. That's what takes this to the next level. It's one thing to be a bad football team. Everybody knows the Raiders are bad. Everybody knows the Giants are bad. People didn't know the Bears were this bad, and that's what makes this that much more embarrassing. And then they find ways to just like sprinkle in new stuff that they find mistakes to make that you didn't realize they could make, or more just like never thought an NFL team would make, because like, how do you get to the NFL in any role and make these kinds of mistakes? Like, for example, there was that play, the touchdown run by DeAndre Swift that was called back for penalty for Doug Kramer forgetting to declare himself as an eligible player and not an offensive lineman on the play, and therefore bringing the play back. And like, that's such a football 101 that like every time you practice with Doug Kramer at fullback, every single practice rep, he should be practicing, hey, the signal is like, you sort of rub your jersey number and you say, okay, hey, I'm reporting as an eligible receiver. Every single rep at practice, he should be practicing before he gets on the field for that rep. He goes to the referees or you make up a coach who's going to be the referee, right? He practices signaling to somebody that I'm checking in and I'm reporting myself as eligible. Like, and he said after the game, okay, it was getting to be late in the play clock and he rushed in and just kind of forgot about it. But like other teams don't consistently make those problems. Okay, you can point to the Lions had a play like that last year but I think that was a controversy where he claimed he made the signal, but the referees didn't see it. But like, you don't really get players just straight up forgetting to do that, especially on the goal line on a touchdown scoring play. It's one thing if it happens on 1st and 10 at the 50. It's another thing when it's a play that takes points off of the board. Or you have Jalen Johnson, who this is not Jalen Johnson's fault, but this is the example here. Did you notice Jalen Johnson's jersey in this game? He played the entire game without the captain C sewn on his jersey. Every team captain gets a C sewn on their jersey. He's had a C sewn on his jersey every game this season, except for this one. And it wasn't as though the Bears took away his captainship. Thomas Brown even confirmed after the game, no, it wasn't a punishment thing. Somebody messed up. And